Hi guys, I'm Mike.
And I'm Ash.
And this is F1 Fanatics. Welcome back to another race review podcast. This is where, after watching the race on the Sunday and giving you our initial reactions, which was crazy to, just an absolute brilliant race in Brazil, we've now let the dust settle a bit, looked at the incidents in a little bit more detail, and we're going to go through the race, just with a little bit more detail and looking at the repercussions, probably more for 2020 than the coming season. I
think one thing we need to put out there.
Yep.
I haven't actually watched the race. I still haven't. So as
Mike listened to the race.
Yeah, as Mike explained in the reaction video yesterday, Sunday even, because this will be going out tomorrow, Tuesday.
Correct.
We were driving back from Silverstone, so I was listening to the race while he was watching it with Alpha and James, and then when we got back home I watched the last 5 laps, so saw the end of it, was going to sit down and watch the race in the evening, and then Mike was going live and was like, I want you in the chat to keep me up to date for penalties, so I then did that, and you guys were brilliant in the chat and kept us for so long that by the time we finished I just was so tired and I can't stay up for 2 hours now to watch this race, and haven't had an opportunity. But I've watched the highlights, I heard most of what was going on, so let's go with it, and hopefully I'll be able to give a very good opinion.
Let's roll with the punches. So, as usual, how we start a race reaction, a race review podcast, we'll give our 1 to 20 of the grid. If you don't know, well actually it might have been not know, because obviously the official release at the end of the race was different with those penalties coming in at the end. Clarification. So number 1 was Max Verstappen converting his first ever pole to win. Fantastic race from him. Pierre Gasly with his maiden podium, and Carlos Sainz promoted with Lewis Hamilton's penalty up onto the podium as well, also securing his maiden podium. And then in P4 we had Kimi Raikkonen, and P5 Antonio Giovinazzi. Fantastic result for the Alphas there. P6 was Daniel Ricciardo. P7 was Lewis Hamilton's new position after his penalty being inflicted. Lando Norris is in P8, Sergio Perez in P9. In P10, rounding up the last of the points finishers, was Daniel Kvyat and the other Toro Rosso. P11, Kevin Magnussen with the Haas, just missing out on the points. Unlucky with obviously that spin that he had with Daniel Ricciardo earlier in the race. P12, George Russell, so close, but yet so far. P13, Romain Grosjean. P14 was Alexander Albon. Very unfortunate with obviously that late contact with Lewis Hamilton, not his fault, and obviously what got Lewis Hamilton penalised. P15 was Nico Hülkenberg. P16 was Robert Kubica, rounding up the last of the cars that finished the race. And then we come on the DNFs. Sebastian Vettel, Charles Leclerc, that's certainly a discussion topic later on. Lance Stroll with a suspension failure on his front right, and then Valtteri Bottas with an engine failure, retiring from the race, leading to a safety car that caused a lot of late race action. There you go guys, that is 1 to 20 on the grid, and there's only really one place to start this Grand Prix, and that for me is the fantastic, superb drive from Max Verstappen.
Yeah, from what I heard, did really well. Seen the defensive manoeuvres that he was pulling off, and also the overtaking. The one thing I want to take away from the race is in Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton, albeit one mistake, we have got 2 of the best overtakers Formula 1 has seen, really. The moves that they were trying, the moves they pulled off, it was fantastic to see. I was really impressed, and the fact that there were times when you were thinking you're not going to go for that move, and both of them did it, pulled it off, and yeah, it was amazing to see.
I think I sent a tweet out with it today going, please, please, please Red Bull, give Max Verstappen a title contending car so that we can have a title battle between him and Lewis, and if Ferrari can get it with Vettel or Leclerc, whichever one they favour in a season, it would be absolutely fantastic to watch. But Verstappen in the race, you mentioned it there, the overtakes were brilliant through the Senna S's in particular, going around the outside, just vastly impressive. And what really impressed me was he was in complete control the whole weekend. This is the Max Verstappen I like to see, not the one in kind of Mexico where he's making bold moves, a bit like Hamilton did in the race, at a place where you shouldn't really be overtaken. He judged his moves perfectly, knew exactly the right times when to overtake, got the pole position on Saturday, and it didn't really look like anyone was going to get close to it when he was in Q3. You're then in the race, despite obviously that, we'll talk about it a bit later, the unsafe pit release from Kubica almost binning him in the wall and forcing him, Hamilton might have, because it was a very good outlap from Hamilton, still been ahead, but it put Verstappen quite far behind, but he caught him in no time, overtook, and from that point on he never looked backwards. And the chief strategist, who obviously got put on the podium with Red Bull, it was nice to see Red Bull recognise her, making a great call to pit Verstappen on the first safety car, which then left him, Hamilton, at the mercy of Max Verstappen, and he obliged and took his victory quite clean and actually managed to avoid a lot of the late drama.
You did. The one thing I would say is, reading into things today on my way home from work, the main reason why Verstappen did catch Hamilton as quickly as he did after the pit stop was because of how much battery power Hamilton had to use to actually have hammer time for that outlap to get the undercut to work. He didn't have any extra power he could use. So it was, who was it that came out and said it? Not Pete Bonington. The guy below Toto.
James Allison?
That's the one, couldn't think of his name. James
Yeah,
Allison has actually come out and said that it was an amateur mistake by Mercedes and Hamilton. So
this is what happens when Toto's not at a Grand Prix.
let's be honest, so it wouldn't have changed the outcome.
I don't think it would have. Whether he had battery power or not, Max Verstappen was winning that race. It was personal after not being able to get the win last year with that controversial incident with Ocon. But he was hungry, and that was the raging bull that we all love to see. And the other Red Bull, who wasn't, he was having a solid race like he had been doing all season, putting himself in a position, and thanks to the safety cars and obviously Bottas' retirement and the two red Ferraris being Ferrari, Alex Albon was on for his maiden podium. Oh, Lewis.
The one thing I'd say though is he wasn't there just because of retirements, because after the Bottas, yes, that helped, because after the first safety car he did get past both Ferraris.
He was on the podium because of the safety car.
The first one.
Because Vettel was in a kind of race of his own in third place. He was above everyone else, but he wasn't really in that kind of race-winning fight there.
But he did pull off a fantastic move on both Ferraris.
It was superb. On the restart on the first safety car, wasn't it? Fantastic.
So yeah, I would say the first safety car helped him get into that position, but it was a deserved position that he was in because he earned it with the overtaking manoeuvre that he did perform.
Of course, no, admittedly so. He turned what was going to be an average race, but this is what great drivers do. From being a position and lulling in a race to then taking advantage of a situation that presents itself, putting your car in a great position. And he did nothing wrong. That's why I gave him a 9 out of 10 in my driver ratings, because you can't have a go with him. He looked like he was going to get second, or if Lewis had taken him at least third, he would have got that podium. So unfortunate. Lewis was just, now the championship's gone, went a little bold on the overtaking, got a bit excited about fighting.
The one thing I'd say is, yes, the door was open, so you can see why Lewis went for it. Still, it was 100% Lewis's fault. Penalty was correct, and as you say, it was unfortunate for Albon because I really like him, and we were watching the last few laps, and I said, yes, Albon's going to get a podium, because I said it in the summer break, he will get one. Not where I thought he'd get it, but I thought he'd get one.
But I think Albon will get podiums in the future,
Yeah.
which then makes the podium that actually did happen of Pierre Gasly so special. After going through the season that he's been through, had a great rookie season with Toro Rosso that earned him that promotion to the Red Bull seat with that Daniel Ricciardo drama that happened at the back end of 2018. Had a torrid first, and his performances did not warrant staying in that Red Bull seat, but his driving style, we've said it before, differs so much to Max Verstappen, and the car is so kind of opposite to a car that he likes to drive. It was probably never going to be a match that was made in heaven, but he is back in Toro Rosso, and to take that negative from that team and turn it into the performances that he's put in this second half season, this is great credit to him, and to be topped off with Toro Rosso's second best ever result in their history as a team, having a drag race to Lewis Hamilton to the finish line, was absolutely superb for Pierre Gasly. Really, really happy for him.
The one thing I'd say is the fight's never gone. He accepted the decision. He might not have agreed with it, but he has also come out and said that he didn't think the performances before the summer break actually matched his ability, and he has got on with it and has outdriven Kvyat quite a bit. There's a very, everyone was saying about Kvyat taking the step up to Red Bull, but Gasly has proven that maybe Kvyat wouldn't have been the right option either, because there has been such a stark difference.
Kvyat for me is a driver that it just looks like has just been beaten into submission. You could tell he was frustrated by being overlooked in the summer, because at that stage he was outperforming Albon, the more experienced driver. Yes, Albon, but Albon was only halfway through his rookie season, and he's like, well, I've come in, I've got a podium at Toro Rosso and Hockenheim. What more do I need to do to be given a second chance in the Red Bull seat, when the first time round it was maybe a little harsh for him to be dropped? Yes, he was dropped for the talent that is Max Verstappen, so it was the right choice in the end. But you could tell from his first interview after the Spa, where Albon came from the back with the penalties with his engine, he was like, I don't get why he's been hyped up, and I'm not being spoken about my performance. It started from there. Then we've seen a little return of the torpedo, with him trying to make bold overtaking moves that he wasn't doing in the first half of the season. And now he doesn't even have the best result for Toro Rosso, which he would have thought was in the bag, securing third place at Hockenheim. But with Pierre Gasly getting that second place, I feel sorry for Daniel, but this is the start of a very kind of, I feel, toxic end between his relationship with Red Bull.
I would say out of the four drivers, he looks the most likely not to be with Red Bull beyond, Red Bull Toro Rosso, beyond the next season. The other three look happy with, you could say Verstappen might not be if he doesn't get a championship winning car, but he still looks happy within the environment he's working in. He knows the limitations of the car, and he obviously knows what Red Bull have got planned, because I don't think, even though they were satisfying the conditions of his contract for the extension, he wouldn't have stayed there.
Contracts can always be bought out.
Exactly. He would not have stayed there if he wasn't sure that there was going to be something next season in terms of step up.
I think he knows what a good gig he's got at Red Bull, because he's got everything gunning towards making Max Verstappen world champion. Yes, if he went to a bigger team it would be, but you've seen with Sebastian Vettel with Ferrari, it doesn't necessarily work out in that fact. And while Lewis Hamilton is at Mercedes, it will always be Lewis Hamilton's team, even if you're the young prodigy talent of Max Verstappen.
Well, we'll discuss it more when we discuss Ferrari, but at this moment in time, my money would be on one of two drivers to win the championship next season, and that is Lewis Hamilton or Max Verstappen, because their teammates aren't going to challenge them over the course of the season, and as I will be explaining when we discuss the Ferrari incident, over the course of a full season they won't be able to challenge for a title at this moment in time.
And that probably rounds off Pierre Gasly quite nicely, obviously securing his maiden podium. And then with that late penalty to Hamilton, another maiden podium and a first for the team since 2014. I've mentioned this a lot over the past couple of days.
Can you remember what race it is now?
No.
You've been told
it's Malaysia, is it?
Australia,
bloody hell. Right, I'll get there. But it was Kevin Magnussen and Jenson Button both getting the podium in that race. But that is obviously, if you haven't guessed it already, McLaren and Carlos Sainz. I think this is testament to him as well, as much as Pierre Gasly's was testament to his kind of willingness to come back and his kind of fighting spirit to fight to the end. Carlos Sainz has been the most consistent driver in the midfield pack all year. First half to second half of the season, there have been some good performances from other drivers in the first half. There's been some good performances in the second half, like a Checo Perez. But with Carlos Sainz consistent all year, and it was kind of almost ironic that he didn't actually get to go on the actual podium, because a lot of his great performances haven't really been covered because the front of the race has been covered, and it's like, oh, Carlos Sainz got fifth today, that was a great race.
But the one thing I will say is the FIA and Formula 1 do have history of it, and I am hoping that he is given his own podium celebration at Abu Dhabi before the race. They've done it before.
They didn't deconstruct the podium before it was announced, so he has had his podium celebration at Hockenheim. Sorry, we just had Brazil.
Not the same.
It's not.
It's not the same. But yeah, they've had history of doing a proper podium celebration for drivers. So I really hope they do it in Abu Dhabi for him, so that he can have that spotlight moment, because he didn't get it, even though they've been able to have him on the podium and he was surrounded by the team, which I think probably is the sort of thing he would have wanted. He hasn't had that opportunity to have that celebration with the fans, which he deserves.
Especially as it's his first. If he had got penalised, because obviously he was under investigation for a long time for having his DRS open while passing the yellow flag on Bottas incident.
He wasn't the only one, there were 6.
Yeah, so I think they basically made the decision, we can't penalise 6 here, so if we let off
we've got to let everyone off.
Exactly, but if Kimi Raikkonen had, he wouldn't have been too fussed. It's just another career podium, other than the fact it would have been Alpha's first in 50 years, which would have been mental. But Sainz, fantastic drive from him. Obviously starting from the back to third, brilliant from Carlos Sainz, brilliant race, and one of the stand-up performances. I gave all three of Max Verstappen, Gasly and Sainz 10 out of 10 ratings for their race, because they were just brilliant.
I don't think you could pick a driver of the day based on it. They all achieved different things really, and it was brilliant. It's one of those where we've said it jokingly in bold predictions that we want McLaren to get a podium. We knew they were getting close. It was just, were they going to have that luck element that they were needing because of the domination of the top 3 teams? And yeah, fistful of luck, but deserved. It's the improvement that they've made in that car this season has been incredible, and as a team, really good effort there, and definitely deserved all round.
And that probably rounds up the kind of positive performances from the race. We'll mention Alpha quickly. 4th and 5th, their best result of the season so far. Fantastic drives from both Kimi and Giovinazzi, getting themselves in the points. And we had been kind of saying that Alpha, Haas and Williams, their seasons were over. And then Haas obviously went and got in Q3, both cars on the Saturday, and on this Sunday Alfa Romeo finished both cars within the top 5, which was a fantastic achievement.
It was only Alfa and Toro Rosso, wasn't it, that had double points finishes?
Correct, and Alpha had the highest of those double points finishes. But yeah, a fantastic achievement for them, and they'll be slightly niggly at the stewards because their cars weren't under investigation, that they didn't punish them. But yeah,
We could have had George Russell in the points.
exactly.
Oh.
But you know, it was still a fantastic drive by both drivers. But yeah, moving on to the instance, and I think the first place to start is probably a clue on Ashley's top, because it caused carnage.
Yeah, it was because of that Lance Stroll retired, because it was because of hitting debris. Yeah, safety car then had to be out longer than was necessary. I say necessary, it needed to clear everything, so it wasn't necessary, but longer than really was needed at that time. And it's now decided for me, as I said, the Ferrari drivers aren't going to be able to challenge for the driver's title next season, because we've been in this situation before with Sebastian Vettel. He doesn't like being managed if it means someone's going to be getting the better of him in the team dynamic, so he's not going to like that. Leclerc's now going to be looking at it. I've out-qualified him for the season, I've out-finished him in the season in terms of race performances, I've got more race wins than him, and I've got more points than him. So Leclerc's not going to be in a position where he's going to say, well, Vettel can stay number one driver. He's going to say he's got an actual claim for it. And as we saw with Mark Webber, Vettel doesn't deal well in those situations.
For me, I don't think there will be a number one at Ferrari, Vettel or Leclerc wise, and that is what will hurt them. They will both be on equal status, and Sebastian Vettel is still a fantastic driver. His second half of the season performances have proven that when more downforce has been put on the car, when the car suited him more, the performance is there. So basically playing on the level playing field with Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton. Charles Leclerc has had an absolutely superb rookie season in a Ferrari. To be out-qualifying, Vettel isn't the one to notice that he's out-qualified. It is the one that he's out-qualified Lewis Hamilton, who has the most pole positions in history in a car that has dominated the Constructors and Drivers' Championship. That is the really impressive one that he has beaten from there. He has natural play, Charles Leclerc, and this season would have massively pushed him forward. And him in the race as well, his defending against Valtteri Bottas on old tyres when Bottas was on fresh mediums was absolutely superb, actually. A better driver might have found a way to get past, like a Verstappen or a Lewis, because I felt like I was having deja vu every lap. Bottas would get close, Leclerc would make the same defensive move, Bottas would think about it, back out, and then, you know, it would go through the centre S's, repeat, same defensive move, wasn't able to get past. But he's been fantastic. For me, the only time you can have two amazing drivers, and they are both amazing drivers, within a team and be successful, is when you have a far superior car to your opponents, like McLaren did in the late 80s with Senna and Prost, like Red Bull did in the 2010 to 2013 range, and like Mercedes have had through the hybrid era when they had Rosberg and Hamilton at each other. That's when you can afford the mistakes to come in. Other than that, you have to have a clear number one in a team, otherwise, yeah, you'll just lose enough points off each other.
I just think at this moment in time, that is a real pressure cooker. I'll get that out. A real pressure cooker of an environment, and it's only going to take something small and it's going to explode. Be it a slightly more aggressive move than what we saw on Sunday, or someone getting to go out first in qualifying when it should be the other way around. It's not going to take a lot, and we saw it with Hamilton and Rosberg. When it does happen, it is incredibly explosive, and the team as a whole needs to be able to get control of it. And unfortunately at the moment, I don't think Binotto's being strong enough and putting his foot down as being the team principal. There's a lot of we'll review it and discuss, and there's no coming out and saying this is what's going to happen. You now need to be going by what the team says.
But I think he does that internally. I don't mind that from a team principal. I think good teams operate with their dirty laundry behind closed doors rather than out in the press, so we all know what's going on. And in terms of, if we clearly knew that Sebastian Vettel was still number one, and then situations where Charles Leclerc was being favoured or something, then like obviously the pit stop favoured Charles Leclerc later on in the race, which caused that situation. They should have pitted Sebastian Vettel under the first safety car. So again, their strategy caused them to be in a dodgy situation that this time around out. The incident itself, me personally, blown out proportion. It's something that happens quite a lot. Drivers touch wheels. For some reason in this case, Leclerc's front right suspension just completely collapsed on itself. Vettel then got a left rear puncture, and yeah, obviously both their races were ruined from that point. I think it's a racing incident myself. Vettel got the better traction on the exit. He's entitled to kind of go for the overtake. He probably came across just a little bit too early in the move. Leclerc hasn't moved at all. He's just gone dead straight down the middle, which is when you're defending a corner, that's what you do. You place your car in the middle so that they can't take the inside line. They have to go around the outside, because that's the harder move to make, because you've got the further distance to travel. But yeah, if anyone was at fault, you would argue Sebastian Vettel. But for me, racing incident, bit unlucky, because it's Ferraris. And that's why no penalty was given either way.
I agreed it was a racing incident. The one thing I would say is both drivers knew exactly what they were doing and knew the risks that were going to come from it. So Vettel, yes, had the drive an extra and better traction than Leclerc. He has come across a lot earlier than he actually needed to. Leclerc has stuck to his line, but if you go back to lap 4 or 5, Lando Norris showed Leclerc what he should have been doing in that situation. Lando Norris is a less experienced driver in F1 than Leclerc, albeit one season, but the fact that he saw the move by Leclerc and took the evasive action to ensure, Leclerc should have been looking to do the same in that situation. So racing incident, because both drivers, as I've just said, can be shown to be at fault for it. If you are going to try and apportion blame to anyone more than the other, it has to be Sebastian Vettel. But
for me, do I blame them? For at the end of the season, constructors is wrapped up. All they're doing is fighting internally for that driver championship position. Vettel doesn't want to have the fact that Leclerc started in P14 and was going to finish ahead of him in the race, and Charles Leclerc desperately wants to get ahead of Sebastian Vettel because he wants to have greater traction within the team and greater leverage within the team. So an expected incident, and something that is probably going to happen. Someone did predict that teammates would collide. God, I can't believe that came off for you in the last
admittedly, I was expecting it to be the Haas drivers, but I said teammates.
But Haas had a good race.
They did. So
for them. Which moves us probably quite nicely onto the next incident, which is the one with Daniel Ricciardo and Kevin Magnussen. And frustration for Ricciardo, because he maybe could have been fighting for that podium at the end without a 5-second penalty.
Should have been.
And Magnussen, for once, elbows out racing, allowed enough room for the guy on the inside to get through the corner. And Daniel Ricciardo, I believe, locked up, which then meant that he slid deeper into the corner and therefore caused a collision with Kevin Magnussen. Spun him round. Kevin Magnussen was able to continue, but it dropped him from that point. I believe he was running 10th all the way back to 18th. So it was always going to be a tough race, when the Haas is a tough car anyway to handle from that point on. So 11 was quite a good recovery.
Yeah, and you can't really argue with the penalty being given to Ricciardo. So it was, as soon as you saw the Ricciardo incident, Hamilton happened, you knew Hamilton was getting the penalty. So.
I think this incident is a lot Daniel Ricciardo coping with being in a less able car. Yeah. He said himself that racing in the midfield this season has improved his racecraft, and I do think it has by the number of overtakes he's done, but he does keep pushing his luck. If you go back over the course of the season, the number of incidents that Daniel Ricciardo has been involved in has been rather a lot, and
when you're in a top car, you can stay off of the brakes for an extra 5, maybe 10 metres and get away with it.
And probably also drivers are a little bit more likely to let you through because they realise that you're not their battle, where now he is very much their battle and everyone is scrapping so hard in those lower positions for track position.
Yeah, definitely. So.
And then the other incident that we probably talk about, actually 2 more. So we'll finish off with the Lewis and Albon one. But the unsafe pit release of Robert Kubica into Max Verstappen, or Mercedes team orders strike again. No, that is a joke. Clearly that didn't happen, but it was very amateur from Williams.
It was, and I still don't understand how it happened, because I would understand them attempting it if they were challenging for position, but it was with the race leader.
It was a bit like Ocon last year. He was a back marker.
It just didn't make sense to me, because there was nothing to be gained by Williams getting out ahead of Verstappen.
And also, even after being released, Kubica was very aggressive.
Yeah.
I
think it was frustration of...
Exactly, he almost pushed Verstappen into the wall. And yeah, I mean, Max did very well to react to that and not be done, and that put him behind. But that probably spurred him on even more. An angry ball. Mercedes would have gone initially, oh yes, and then they would have gone, oh no. Max, when he's angry and determined, usually puts in some superb performances, and a superb performance ensued.
Quick one, Bottas. Alright, so we both said it. Based on what I heard, I didn't understand why the safety car came out. You said you didn't understand it.
No. Basically, Bottas went round and parked in a safe position off track, and the truck that was picking the car up was behind the barrier.
So, bit of reading by me.
Cool.
Nice bit of explanation by Mike Massey. So, the issue they had was he had the engine failure. He struggled to put his steering wheel back onto the car. The stewards managed to get... The marshals, not the stewards. Stewards went out. The marshals managed to get the steering wheel back on, but couldn't get the car into neutral, so weren't able to roll the car. So it meant that the crane had to come and get it. And since, let me get the year right, 2014 was Jules Bianchi?
Mm-hmm.
Since 2014, it has been almost an unwritten rule that if there's any form of vehicle having to come near to the track with the potential of having to come onto it, a safety car is automatically deployed. So, yes, we couldn't understand it at the time, but when you look at the reasoning, especially, it's an unwritten rule now. Safety has to come first, and
absolutely.
Let's be honest, we're sort of happy the safety car came out, aren't we?
Yeah, it was a superb race up until that stage, really good, and then it went up another level with all the action that then ensued after the safety cars came. Moving on to the last incident, we'll move back onto Bottas in a second. Alexander Albon, like we said, robbed of that kind of first maiden podium himself. Lewis Hamilton went for a move that he shouldn't really go. Reminds me of Mexico with Max Verstappen in the grandstand, going for a move that really wasn't there to kind of make. It's bold. If you make it, you look great, but if you don't, you go from there. Lewis probably would have got Albon on a straight anyway, going from there. But, you know, am I sort of happy to see Lewis Hamilton, now that the gloves are off, being his competitive racing style and really going for bold moves? I think secret I am. I'm sorry for obviously Albon being in, Lewis has been punished accordingly, but I'm excited that Lewis was doing it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and one thing I'm thinking, isn't it still, he's only won one race after he's secured a championship? Yeah,
he has terrible form after securing a championship.
He sort of doesn't really care. So to see him, like, once the championship's secured, it's not that he doesn't care. It's more, he doesn't have to be at 100%. So to see the competitive side of him still. I like it. I feel sorry for Albon, because I really like Albon and would have liked him to have got a podium. But as I said, the door was opened slightly and Hamilton tried to force his way through it, which was never going to work.
The door was not opening.
It wasn't going any further.
It closed very quickly.
Yes, incredibly quickly, and it was always going to there. That's the one thing about it. And as you said, in all honesty, he probably would have overtaken Albon on the way up the hill. But then again, he couldn't get past Gasly up the hill. So
exactly, so maybe
he wouldn't have.
And we're going to move back to Bottas now, and maybe he's kind of switched off because it doesn't necessarily mean too much. And obviously Mercedes struggled performance-wise at altitude again. It had affected their top speed, hadn't it?
You say it affected, it may have done, but in the hands of Hamilton, it was a car that was challenging for a race win. So I don't know how much you can look into it and say yes, they were affected. But if you're challenging for a race win,
they were talking about the wind a lot because it got a little bit of a dull period, not a dull period, but a time for people to breathe within the race. And there was just Crofty going, Crofty was going on about the wind, and then Ted Kravitz went out and said, I can confirm it's windy, and we're like going, what are you on about?
So but either way, you can turn around and say, look, your car's being affected by altitude, but you can't really turn around and say you're struggling when you've got a driver challenging for a race win. I don't think you'd be not you personally. I don't think Red Bull were turning around and saying, oh well, we were struggling with Albon down in 5th when Max is leading the race. So for Mercedes, I know what you're going to say. We're both coming to the same conclusion here. It was a poor race by Bottas.
It was a poor race by Bottas. The engine failure was a blessing in disguise because it was a really uncompetitive race for him. But the only way I will defend him a little bit is because obviously Mercedes have been listening to Ash's idea, and Ashley thinks that during the race that all the teams should use every compound of tyre, soft, medium and hard within the race. And Mercedes got that memo only for Bottas because they pitted him. They didn't really, but they pitted him hoping to go for a one-stop strategy, got on the hards. The hards were a terrible compound in the race, and then poor Bottas then had to pit again onto the mediums. So I don't know how much. It's usually about a second or a second and a half a lap slower over consistently, and that time he lost. But his big fault was he went on the medium tyres with Charles Leclerc ahead of him on a older set of medium tyres. He wasn't able to find a way through.
The one thing I'm going to say quickly, running joke between us that I think you should use all 3 compounds. It's more the fact I think we should just make it a mandatory minimum 2 stop. Races are more interesting when we have 2 stops. Look at yesterday.
Yeah, strategy comes into play.
It just makes it more interesting when there's that differing strategy. But that's another story.
That's another story. We'll see. We are hopeful for 2021 rules, so hopefully the closer racing will solve all those issues anyway. It's not going to be perfect, but hopefully it can go to a stage of bridging the gaps. And that probably rounds up Bottas. The engine kind of failure saved his face in it. And now we finish off is our rookie of the weekend. And
I think we're both going to agree on this one.
It was Alexander Albon.
It was Alexander Albon. Was having his first podium had it not been for the incident. And on the whole, it was a very comfortable drive for him because he had got in front of Bottas and Leclerc on pit strategy. Did end up behind Leclerc because of another pit stop, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And then the move to get past both Ferraris. On the whole, fantastic race, deserved the podium, just unfortunate with the incident, so yeah.
Exactly. A very close second place though for me was Antonio Giovinazzi. I will give him a shout out because 5th place in an Alpha.
We always say, we've been saying it, him and George Russell have to do something amazing to get it, and I feel we've been a bit harsh it's more the fact that Albon did something quite amazing as well.
Yeah, he would have been. we're almost anticipating that Albon's performance was podium worthy.
Yeah.
Something was taken out of his control. But the 5th place for Giovinazzi was an incredible drive in an Alpha.
And had George Russell got the points, he would have had Rookie of the Day. Abu Dhabi, Q2 and a points finish.
That's what people keep saying. Abu Dhabi, points finish for Russell. But guys, that probably rounds it off. For me, I've been saying it over the weekend, that was my favourite race of the season. I think it's been the best. It had it all. And unlike Hockenheim, although Hockenheim was brilliant and probably my previous favourite race of the season, it didn't really have weather conditions affecting the race. Yes, the safety car spiced it up before then, but before that we had fantastic battles right at the top between Lewis and Max. We had battles throughout the field as well that was superb to watch. Yeah, it was just an absolute brilliant race.
Definitely, I'd agree. Another one I predicted on the bingo card though, weather affected race. Do you think the wind counts?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, enough drivers complained about it, so Mark, if you're watching.
And also, I think one of our only ones when we did our start the second half of the season podium predictions video, we predicted that Max would win this race as almost vengeance for last year's Brazil, and he did it. We got one right.
We didn't get the rest of the podium right now.
Nah, we'll forget about it. We got first right, that's the main one.
One minute, we should actually have a look. Have we got any of them right?
Well, we're going to review that at the end of the season, so
Good.
make sure we check that, because I have no idea what we
I can't remember now.
suggested from there. But guys, that rounds up our race review podcast. If you've liked this video, don't forget, give us a thumbs up.
Make sure to press the subscribe button, because I've said it in a few of the videos now. We keep looking at the channel data, and there's about 25-30% of people that are watching the videos but aren't subscribed. Also, press the bell icon. You'll get another notification of when a video goes live, and you'll be able to see our race weekend coverage.
And comment down below what you thought on the race, what you thought on those major incidents, what were kind of your standout performances and the talking points from the race. Who was your rookie of the weekend? Was it Albon? Was it Giovinazzi? I think those are the two main contenders for this weekend. But yes, give us your justifications for that. But for now, you F1 fans, keep racing.